It is a particular pleasure to welcome to Doha Itamar Rabinovich, an old friend, a diplomat and scholar extraordinaire, and an author of a forthcoming biography of Yitzhak Rabin that I think many of us will want to read. Itamar, as you walk us through your thoughts on the future of the Middle East, perhaps you could tell us if you've heard anything here this morning that has made you more hopeful.
Yeah. Thank you, Jim, for this kind introduction, and thank you to our Qatari and French hosts. And thank you to my colleagues on the panel for having made a variety of so many interesting comments and insights. The only advantage of being the last speaker in a large panel is that you may have some perspective on everything that has been said. And I'd like to say that looking, let's say, the next 10 years or so and trying to integrate what you have heard, we are talking about 4 levels of analysis. A point was made by my Saudi colleague and in a very powerful way by Saib Arikat, the infrastructure. This is a region that now has almost 500 million inhabitants. Egypt now is a country of 91 million, and soon enough will be a country of 100 million that it cannot feed. If these issues of production, the relationship between population, demography, and resources, the need to develop industry and sources of occupation for this very young population will not be resolved in the next few years, nothing is going to be stable. I mean, every political structure will then be standing on a house of cards. So one major effort needs to be made in that regard. And there is no objective reason that the Middle East will not undergo changes similar to what Asia, East and Southeast Asia underwent in previous decades. There's nothing that should hinder that. The second level is the level of the state. What we are witnessing now is a collapse of a large number of states. At least 6 or 7 states in the region meet the classic definition of failed state. Unfortunately, Syria is the worst case, but Iraq, Yemen, Somalia, Sudan, Lebanon, so forth, meet that definition, and therefore a second challenge is to build durable states, durable frameworks for people to live in and to conduct their collective life in the coming years. The third is the issue of a regional order. The Middle East is a region. It's not just a piece of geography on the globe. It is a region, and there are patterns for conducting the relationship among the countries, the members of that region. And part of the current crisis and problem in the Middle East that there is right now no pattern. There's not the Arab League is not functional. You have the Saudi-Iranian rift, the Shiite-Sunni rift, the continuing Arab-Israeli conflict, the Syrian crisis, which is a cockpit of regional rivalries, and so on and so on. Very important is the fact that the Middle East has been joined by 2 very large and powerful actors in recent decades, by Turkey and Iran. Iran and Turkey, during much of the 20th century, were not part of the Middle Eastern system. They now are in a full way. And their integration has not been done, not by themselves and not by the others. So there has to be a quest. Miguel Moratin spoke about the way Europe tried to do that quite successfully. The Middle East needs to go through such a process, both in large, broader way and in particular issues. Of course, the Israeli-Palestinian conflict has been mentioned here by several speakers, including the prime ministers. Saib and I share the ultimate line, that is to say, a two-state solution. We both believe in a two-state solution. We both worked for it. This is not a great time for the two-state solution, for developments that happen in our both parties and also internationally. So, but obviously, this needs to happen. It's the only way to resolve that issue. The international. The Middle East was governed for decades by the Cold War. There was, after the collapse of the Soviet Union, a period of American ascendancy. There now is a renewed competition. And now with Trump's election, there is talk about potentially a rapprochement between Putin's administration and Trump's administration. Maybe yes, maybe not. What we hear from, what we heard from candidate Trump and what we see by the names of candidates for key positions in foreign and national security policy does not send a single and a clear message, and there are contradictions built into this. If President-elect Trump is very anti-Iranian, but is friendlier with Mr. Putin, how do you reconcile that to issues? Very difficult to reconcile. We'll have to see how that works out. And of course, all these four levels need to be integrated in a comprehensive way. Otherwise, there is no clear path for us to follow. Finally, a word about the very term Middle East that I think will give us an interesting insight. The Middle East is the only part of the world that is defined geographically from the outside. We speak about Latin America, we speak about Africa, we speak about Southeast Asia. They are all absolute terms. The Middle East is a relative term. It's the Middle East because seen from Europe, there is the Far East and there is the Middle East. So the Middle East refers to itself in a term that reflects an external view, not an internal view. And it's time for people in the Middle East to change that and to start looking at themselves, at the region, and act by themselves, because salvation will not come from the outside. The outside can be helpful, needs to be used, but it's up to the people of the region to take the fate in their hands and try to make the next decade better than this decade.
Itamar, thank you. It was reassuring to hear you reinforce the idea of the two-state solution is still possible and achievable. What needs to be done now to make it plausible as a solution?
I think the single most important act needs to come from President-elect Trump. We have seen contradictory signals. Names have been mentioned for key positions that are actually hostile to this idea. He himself spoke twice, early in the campaign and then in his Wall Street Journal, about his willingness to resolve this issue. He said this is the ultimate deal that he can make. Of course, if he throws his weight into that, that could be a shot in the arm to a process that has been seemed to be moribund for too many years. So if you ask me for the one important message, it needs to come from Donald Trump.
Thank you.